The destruction and the killing continues unabated. After days of heavy bombing, Israel has now launched its ground offensive into Gaza City, further destroying an already largely demolished city, with more civilians are being killed, including children. Many, many more are being severely wounded, and thousands are being forced to try to flee the bombs, but with nowhere safe to go to, and still fighting the Israeli-made famine conditions. The ground incursion came on the same day that the Commission for the UN Human Rights Council joined other international scholars in saying the annihilation Israel is carrying out is clearly a genocide. While governments from Canada to France have condemned the latest move from Israel, still no action being taken to stop the onslaught. Well, before we look at the very latest coming to us from Gaza City, to get more insight on it all, we can cross now and speak with an emergency doctor who has worked in Gaza during the past 2 years, during the heavy bombing on the Strip and on the hospitals in it. A doctor now on board the global Flotilla, which is sailing towards Gaza, hoping to break the illegal blockade and bring some vital supplies to starving, trapped Palestinians. Dr. James Smith, thanks so much for your time and joining us here on France 24. Can I start simply, as we see you're sitting aboard that flotilla, can I start just simply by asking you how you guys are doing now, where this massive movement is currently at?
Yes, it's a shame I can't show you the view around me, but as I'm looking out now, I can see several other boats in front of me. The flotilla is currently 29 vessels. We will shortly be meeting with a further 18 that are waiting at anchor just off the coast of Sicily, and more hopefully will be joining from Greece, potentially other countries over the course of the next couple of days. After this flotilla has, well, we hope successfully reached Gaza, there will be many more following in the coming weeks, a sort of a staggered campaign of ongoing attempts to break Israel's illegal siege.
Now, while you sail, though, James, things have only gotten worse in Gaza. Israel launching that ground offensive. I know you've worked in Gaza until quite recently. Are you still managing to have any contact with Palestinians that are trapped there?
I am, yes, absolutely. I'm in daily contact with friends and colleagues in the hospitals there. Just yesterday, Al-Rantisi Hospital, a specialist children's hospital in Gaza City, was repeatedly struck by the Israeli military. Patients still in the hospital, patients, carers and healthcare workers, including critically unwell children. As you've mentioned in your introduction just there, Israel's ground, aerial and sea assault of the entirety of Gaza, but specifically now Gaza City, continues and intensifies as we speak. I mean, these are the most horrific conditions. I struggle now to find the language, barbarity, catastrophe, the horrors of this situation, only amplified, frankly, by the inaction, again, as you mentioned in your introduction there, of global powers who have a legal, political and moral obligation to act to prevent the commission of genocide. They've clearly failed to do that. The situation in Gaza is a genocide and has been a genocide for almost 2 years now, and yet these powers still don't act to bring about an end to Israel's ongoing attacks.
Indeed, and I mean, James Smith, you were a first-hand witness of what has been happening. Can you tell us a bit of the time you were in Gaza, what you saw and what you were able to tell authorities when you came home?
I mean, the footage that we're now seeing of people fleeing south from Gaza City is reminiscent of what we saw when people were forced to flee from Rafah north to the middle area. Now people are being pressed into this tiny strip, as you can see in the footage there along the coastline. Hospitals repeatedly attacked. Every single healthcare facility that I visited in Gaza had been attacked in one form or another, either with direct air or artillery fire, gunfire, or of course by the intentional deprivation of the equipment that these facilities require simply to function. When I came back from Gaza, I and many others, and of course Palestinian healthcare workers themselves, have testified to the targeted and systematic violence that we directly witnessed. What is abundantly clear, I met with French politicians, British politicians, Spanish politicians, what's abundantly clear is that there's no lack of awareness or understanding. These politicians cannot claim that they don't know what is going on in Gaza. They are acutely aware, and they have been now for almost 2 years, and they have still chosen not to act.
And Dr. Smith, when you went in to Gaza, I mean, I can't imagine the working conditions, but I believe, you know, everything was being done to stop even international doctors trying to save lives of Palestinians, even baby formula taking out of suitcases.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. I myself was denied entry to Gaza twice by the Israeli military, arbitrarily, no reason given. Approximately 50% of international healthcare workers are denied access by Israel. This is, of course, part of its wider strategy. This forms a very a core pillar of Israel's genocidal strategy, which is to intentionally deprive humanitarian aid from reaching Gaza, healthcare workers, other humanitarian workers from entering Gaza, while at the same time systematically targeting Palestinian healthcare workers, Palestinian humanitarian professionals, in an attempt to deprive Palestinians of the most basic necessities that are required simply to sustain life.
Indeed, a basic food and medical care, clean water. When you speak, going back to the contact you have with people that are trapped in Gaza City today, I mean, they're being told to flee, but there isn't actually anywhere to go. Any idea what they are trying to do to survive?
Well, most people now that have chosen to flee have moved down the coastal road, which is the only road that they can use to flee towards Deir al-Balah and al-Mawasi. Prior to these latest forced displacement orders as imposed by Israel, approximately 10% of Gaza, 90% of Gaza was already subject to forced displacement orders or in the direct control of the Israeli military on the ground. There is no space in Gaza for 2.1 million people to safely shelter in a dignified fashion. I mean, we need to just cut through the rhetoric that Israel is presenting here. I see several media agencies and political analysts still reproducing the language that Israel is using, that these are evacuation orders. This is a strategy of progressive ethnic cleansing that we're seeing here that is being dressed up as something somehow humanitarian. The absurdity defies comprehension.
Dr. Smith, you mentioned the lack of reaction from international authorities who have seen what is happening. The Flotilla, an example of what people can do, how people are taking things into their own hands, coming together. There are, of course, people that can't be part of that flotilla. You know, what do you suggest to people who are feeling the same as a part of those Sumud flotilla people that are... There's protests planned again on the streets of Paris here at 6:30 at La République this evening. There's that Thursday boycott for Gaza that has been going on. But what do you think is useful for the average citizen to do, the citizen who wants to react as you are yourself doing?
I really appreciate you asking this question. I mean, the Palestine solidarity movement is at its biggest. This is in the history of the Palestine solidarity movement. We have never seen a moment like this. The flotilla is just one element of a much wider strategy of resistance to Israel's genocide, but also Israel's history of settler colonialism, apartheid, and occupation. In London last week, there were protests against the arms fair at which Israeli arms companies were marketing their wares. There are protests on the streets of several cities every single day now in solidarity with Palestine and the Palestinian people. And that movement will continue to grow. And it must continue to grow after a ceasefire and once the genocide is finally brought to its end. But of course, all of us bear a collective responsibility to prevent the commission of atrocity crimes. The Genocide Convention specifically refers to state obligations, but we all bear a moral duty to do absolutely everything in our power to prevent people from allowing situations of violence and injustice to fester, as Israel has done not just over the course of the last 2 years, but over the course of its 80-year history.
And finally, to people who say they don't feel there is any point in taking part in these protests that have been ongoing for 2 years, what would you tell them?
We must continue. We owe it to our friends in Palestine to continue. As you said, not everyone can join a flotilla, not everyone can take to the streets in protest, but there are a whole host of actions that people can and should be taking to press their political representatives to uphold their legal and political obligations.
Dr. James Smith, emergency doctor on that global Samud flotilla, thanks so much for joining us and your time here on France 24.